Welcome everybody to today's demonstration. I'm going to be demonstrating Salmon Goujons today, and I'm going to be showing you how to prepare fish. I'm going to be talking to you all about the health benefits of fish. Okay, I'm going to be talking to you about options you've got with the ingredients, just in case you don't want to use salmon for whatever reason. And also I'm going to be explaining the difference between coating and enrobing, and explaining the principles of enrobing foods. And you will see that this is the recipe. I have in fact uploaded this to Google Classroom on your stream, and also on ePraise, so that you've got the recipe to hand as you need it. Okay, so I'm going to move that out the way, and I'm going to talk to you about fish. Right, what kinds of lovely fish have you all sort of eaten in the past? If you have any answers, send them to me through the Google chat now. Nobody's eaten any fish. What is the fish that we get from the fish and chip shop? What's the typical fish that we get from the fish and chip shop when we go and have that as a treat? Well done, Ed. It is cod. Yeah, you can also get, I think, yeah, well done, Sean. Cod, well done. Very good. Sometimes fish fingers, Woody. Sometimes you can get haddock as well in fish and chip shops, which is another white fish. If a fish goes white when it's cooked, like cod and haddock do, we classify them as white fish. Okay. Now, fish, as you can see here from the picture you've got in front of you, okay, you can classify fish in lots of different ways. You can classify fish according to where it's actually been grown and lived. Is it sort of a saltwater fish that lives in the sea, okay, like tuna, like cod? Is it a freshwater fish like salmon or trout? Is it a river fish like salmon? Okay, so you can classify fish in that way. You can classify fish according to its shape. Is it a round fish that looks like a barrel, like trout, like salmon? Or is it a flat fish, like plaice? You can classify fish, and that's the one we're going to concentrate today, by the colour of its skin. Not its skin, its flesh. And salmon, you can get varieties of different colours of salmon. You can get pink to sort of almost a deep orangey red colour. Okay, snapper fish, red snapper, that's another fish that's got a colour in its flesh. Shark has got bass, sea bass, trout has got colour to its flesh. Now, any fish that's got any colour at all to the flesh, okay, we call those oily fish. And the colour of the flesh is as a result of the oil being distributed between its muscles. If it's got oil between its muscles, it changes the colour. If it's got no oil at all between its fibres, the fibres of its muscles, it won't be a colour when it's cooked. It'll be white. Okay, so cod and haddock, those fish actually store their oil inside their livers. They don't, the DNA of the animal doesn't store any oil inside the muscle of the fish, which is why when you cook it, it then goes white. Okay, but a fish like salmon and trout and sea bass and mackerel, sardines, they all have coloured flesh, which means that they've got this magical, wonderful omega-3 fatty acid oil inside the actual flesh, the muscle flesh of the fish. Okay, and that's why I'm using it today, because they're saying that, the health authorities have said for a long time now that we should all be getting at least one portion of oily fish every week as part of our diet for optimal health. And I'm going to explain that why that is later on. But for now, can you give me an indication what colour board in the food industry do we use to prepare raw fish on? Answers through chat. Here's a clue. What's the colour of the sea? Well done, Emmanuel. Yes, absolutely. So for that reason, I've got my damp board here, my damp cloth here, and I'm going to put my blue chopping board on the top. And here you have as well a blue knife, okay, a blue handled knife. Now this blade is extremely sharp, extremely thin, and extremely dangerous. Okay, but that's the correct kind of knife to use to prepare fish, because it can easily get between the bones and the blade and the flesh when you're preparing it. Okay, so if you had been in school, we would give you these boards, blue boards and blue knives. We would take them away at the end of the practical and put them through the dishwasher to get them hygienically clean. But of course, you're at home, so you'll have to use whatever you've got to hand. Just remember to make sure it's really clean before you start. Disinfect it if you want to before you start. Just use a really good sharp knife, whatever you've got at home. And when you've finished using the equipment, your chopping board and your knife at home, okay, make sure you wash them thoroughly, and again, sanitize them, disinfect them, put them through the dishwasher before you use them for any other job. Okay, so here we go. Here is our blue board and blue knife. Okay, and onto that, I'm actually going to put a little pile of grit. Well, we don't use grit in the food room. We use salt. So I'm going to put a little corner of salt where you can see it there. There you go. That's going to act as grit for when I prepare my fish. Here are my salmon fillets. In fact, I've already prepared one earlier. And here's the other one. This is the second one. I'm going to take out the packet. Here we go. This is one of two salmon fillets that come in the pack. Okay. Sourced in Norway. And here you've got that beautiful bright orange flesh of salmon. This is lovely red salmon. And you can see the skin and the scales on the other side. Now, if you buy your fish and it doesn't have skin and scales on it, you don't need to do this first step. But I'm going to show you now how to remove the skin from the fish before we start preparing our goujons. There we are. Now then. So, as I said earlier, all fish is brilliant for health. It's got high biological value protein in it. Now, just like chicken and meat and eggs and milk and anything made at the dairy, of course, anything from an animal or part of an animal is going to have high biological value, or HBV, protein in it. And what that means is that in the one ingredient, you're getting all the amino acids that your body needs to make all the other amino acids that it needs for everything it does in the body. So there are 8 essential amino acids that adults need. And if you've got one super ingredient that gives you all 8 essential amino acids that can then generate 22 amino acids that our body needs to live, then hey, this is a fantastic food. And that's why it's high biological value. Now, just about everything living contains amino acids. But plants and cereal crops, fruits, vegetables, anything from the plant kingdom, bar one thing, they contain low biological value proteins because their makeup actually lacks one or more of the essential 8. So if one of the essential 8 amino acids is missing from, let's say, lemon, okay, it does mean that we can't class that as high biological value. That's low biological value. In fact, lemons have only got a couple of the essential 8 amino acids in there. Okay, whereas fish and anything else from an animal, that contains all 8. So the benefit of using our lovely orange salmon here is that we're getting this fantastic omega-3 fatty acid in the flesh. We don't have to eat its liver or squeeze its liver and have little oil capsules or supplements. We're getting it in the actual ingredient. So how do we skin this piece of salmon? Well, let's grit up first. So I'm literally getting my fingers covered in salt, and I'm taking hold of the shallow end, but without lifting the whole thing up, keeping it down so that the skin is actually touching the board, the chopping board. I'm now going to angle the knife to a 45-degree angle, so it's not straight down, it's not flat bladed, it's at that halfway house point, 45 degrees. Okay, and holding on tightly because fish is very slippery. I'm holding on to the shallow end. Keep it down and take your knife through until you feel resistance. Now don't keep cutting, okay, downwards, because you'll cut through the skin, even though it is very tough. But if you now keep the knife blade at a 45-degree angle, and I'm pushing and seesawing, and I'm making sure that the blade is right down up against the skin. Okay, so it's right there next to the skin, but it's at that 45-degree angle. And I'm literally seesawing and pushing like that, and it comes apart. So there's the skin. Okay, now I've got this extra little bit that I was holding on to here. I don't want to waste that. So I'm literally going to do the same the other end, seesaw it, and it comes off. Now that goes in the bin. If you have recycling, you can put fish skin in the bin. If when you turn it over, you've still got some of the skin, that doesn't matter. That's actually part of the flesh, and that won't be tough and rubbery like skin. So that's perfectly all right there. And on the other side here, we've got this sort of grey area. That's still fish. That's not the skin. You can still eat that. There's no problem with that. So there you go. I have removed the skin. Now I'm going to take a piece of paper and I'm just going to wipe the board so that we don't have any scales or skin left on the board. I can get rid of the salt into the corner for a minute. Some of you might not be able to get hold of salmon, and you might decide you prefer to use a white fish like cod. You'll probably find that a cod doesn't have any skin on it anyway, which is good news, because then you don't have to take it off. And of course, any of these big fishmongers in places like Morrison's and Sainsbury's, okay, if you ask them nicely, they're very happy to remove the skin from you before you actually take it home. So you could just ask them to do it. But if you want to have a go at it yourself, now I've shown you how to do that. Really quite simple and easy. Now we're going to start preparing our goujon. So I'm going to grit my fingers again, okay, and I'm going to claw grip. All right, and I think I'm going to cut this strip of salmon into 3 long slices to start with. There we go. Very sharp knife. Here I'm going to go back to the bridge hold. Do you remember doing all of these holds in year 8? There we go. So I'm literally just letting the blade cut through the flesh until it reaches the board. And the sort of the secret about goujon, okay, is to keep them a uniform size and consistency. You see, you might decide that that is the size and shape of the goujon that you want to end up with. You don't want to cut them into anything smaller than that. But because it's about 1 centimetre wide, as long as all of the strips are 1 centimetre wide, it means that they will cook at the same time. So something that small is only going to take 10 minutes to cook, whereas something like this is going to take 15 minutes to cook. So if you put them on the same tray at the same time, that's going to be overcooked and quite hard and rubbery, okay, when that is just perfectly cooked. So try and keep them the same size, shape and width so that they all cook at the same time. Today, I'm actually going to cut my goujon into smaller strips about the length of my finger, okay, because I think those will take about 10 minutes to cook. There we go. So I'm going to cut that one. There's a goujon there, and there's, if I cut that in half, and here is this one as well. There we go. So I think I've now cut my one, don't forget this was only one salmon fillet, so I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, approximately 10 sort of nice goujon strips, but you can make them bigger or smaller according to how many you want to feed. Okay, so we've done the preparation of the fish, so I'm going to move that board out of the way so that I can get my enrobing things ready. Okay, now before I move on, anybody out there who is vegetarian and who is saying, Miss, I don't eat fish, it could be religious, it could be culture, it could be taste, it could just be that, you know, you just don't like fish or nobody in your family eats fish. I'm sorry to hear that, because it is such a wonderful food to eat. Not only has it got high biological value protein, it's got that magic oil in between its fibers, and therefore it's giving you really excellent cholesterol lowering fat in your diet as well. Also helps to stop arthritis, and they think that it's also key in helping to prevent things like Alzheimer's forming. But if you really, really don't want to do any kind of fish, either oily or white fish, there is nothing stopping you preparing some vegetables, cutting them into sort of finger length strips and enrobing those and cooking those and having vegetable goujon instead of fish goujon. And you could do this with chicken as well if you prefer. But it would be good for everybody to try doing this with fish for the health benefits you get from fish, as well as the great protein and the great fat that you've got in it. You've got brilliant micronutrition in fish. You've got iodine, you've got potassium, manganese, magnesium, and all sorts. You've got calcium in there as well, and you know, all of these micronutrients, all of that great protein, all of that really excellent oil, which is fat, that you've got in there as well. This means that this is a great thing to eat, and it's in a nice form too. It's almost like they are thin fish fingers. So I'm going to move them out of the way and talk to you about the other ingredients. Okay. Move that there. Here we go. Now, as you can see on the list here, okay, you have got, it says for the enrobing, forget of both dishes, you're just making the salmon goujon. It says 50 grams of flour. Now, I double that up. I always use more than 50 grams. 50 grams, I think, is a little bit too, you know, it doesn't coat them quite well enough. So I would say 100 grams is a better amount to use for 2 fillets of fish. Okay, but here's the change that you might want to make. It says plain flour. Actually, any type of flour is perfectly all right. So if you have a flour allergy, if you have celiac disease or irritable bowel syndrome, you know, or anything else, it might be that you want to take out ordinary plain wheat flour and put corn flour instead in its place. Okay, but you do need about 100 grams of some sort of flour. 2 eggs, and I've beaten my eggs, so you know, any size of egg doesn't matter. If you can't eat egg, if you have an egg allergy, there's nothing to stop you using water or even milk or cream or yogurt can act as the liquid instead of eggs if you prefer. The breadcrumbs, 200 grams of breadcrumbs. It says, or 4 slices of bread, grated or food processed. Today, I've actually got 3 types of bought breadcrumbs because they needed using up. We've had them in the cupboard for a few months and they need to be used. So here I've got golden. These have, of course, have had yellow food covering added to it to make it yellow. And we've got a Paxo and a Tesco, which look the same. Those are what they call natural coloured breadcrumbs, but these have been manufactured. So these are going to have salt and other preservatives in them, as well as colouring, if you buy the golden ones. And you might prefer to use homemade breadcrumbs. I'm just mixing them up together like so. Okay, you can use whatever breadcrumbs you like. And I think that is about 150 grams to 200 grams of breadcrumbs that will make a really nice coating. Now, before we go any further, it says dried mixed herbs and seasonings. Well, seasonings means salt and pepper. You can put some salt and pepper into the flour as well if you wish. You might decide, especially if you're using, sort of manufactured breadcrumbs, you might decide, I don't want to add any extra salt to it because it's already got salt in. But here are other things that you can put in. You can put mixed herbs in. You could chop up some fresh herbs if you want, using the rock and chop technique, and you can put those on. You could use mustard. So here I've got some powdered mustard. That's very strong mustard, but if you like it mustard flavor, you can. You could use chili powder or curry powder, and you could add a bit of that in as well to that. You can use whatever you like, add it to whatever stage you like, or you could just use the breadcrumbs and nothing else. So I've put the breadcrumbs on a plate. That is the last step of the process, so I'm going to put that actually over here to one side, so it's just in your sight, so you can see what I'm going to do there. There's my flour, 100 grams of that is ordinary plain flour, but you can use whatever flour. There, that's going at the front. Okay, and I've got my eggs somewhere, she said, looking for it. Can't find the egg. I thought I'd had it somewhere. Where did I put the egg? I'm going to go and get the egg. Presto, there's my beaten egg. Okay, so here I've got my 3 steps for enrobing. Now, before you start, think ahead. Are you going to make them and then put them on a greased baking tray? So I'm just going to literally put a little bit of oil. This is just a little bit of olive oil on the tray like so. I'm going to cook these in the oven. They're going to bake. So I'm going to just spread that oil over a baking sheet like that. And if you're going to make them, put them on the silver tray and cook them. Fantastic. Have that ready nearby so that you've got somewhere to put them once you've finished. So I'm going to put those at the side there. Or it might be that you want to put them onto the tray and then cover them with some cling film and refrigerate them so that you're going to cook them just before you eat them. Fish is not great heated up. If you're going to reheat fish, I'm afraid it's going to go very, very hard. It lacks a protein called collagen and elastin, in fact. And those particular proteins, if they're not there inside a particular animal, like fish, then the heat will go right through and cook beautifully. It'll cook it very, very quickly. But it does mean that if you then reheat it, it'll go really hard and solid, almost like eating leather. So don't think, oh, I'll make them now, I'll cook them now, and then I'll reheat them later on when we're ready to have our evening meal or lunch. Actually, make them and refrigerate them, and they only take 10, 12, maybe 15 minutes to cook. So just put them in 10 minutes before you want to eat. Okay, but I'm going to put them on my tray there, and I'm going to get my board back. My fish is right next to us. So where do we start with enrobing? Well, the first thing we do is we take the fish first and we dip it into the flour. So fish first in flour. That's how I remember it. Now, you are coating the goujon at this point with the flour so that every wet surface of the fish has been covered with the flour. If you forget to do that, and you take your piece of fish, your fish goujon, and you put it straight into the egg, I'm afraid the egg will just slip straight off the fish. So the flour is acting as what we call a key that will then help the egg to stick to it. And that's what I'm doing now. So after the flour, we go to the egg. We make sure, all of the excess egg is dripped off, but make sure it's all completely coated. And then we put it into our breadcrumbs, cover it completely, pack it in so that it's a really well coated goujon. And then there you go, folks. There is your first goujon done really nicely, and that can go straight onto our greased baking sheet like so. Okay, now I'm going to do that again. So fish first, coat it completely so that you can see that the flour has gone all over the outer edge. Shake off any excess flour, okay, and then dunk it into the egg. Let the excess egg run off like so, and then put it onto your breadcrumbs. Pack it in, push it in so that the breadcrumbs are really sticking to that egg and it's well coated. Shake any excess off that you like and put it onto your baking tray. Now, you can see I'm now turning into the thing from the Fantastic Four. Every few goujon, you're going to have to wash your hands because you'll lose the sensation in your fingers because you're literally enrobing your fingertips. Okay, but I can do 3. So there's the third one. So we coat in the flour, but the whole process where we're putting a lovely layer of coating on the outside that's nice and thick, that is called enrobing. The process is called enrobing. And this is basically, how you get your fish fingers or your breaded cod fillets that you buy in the shops. Okay, this is what they do on an industrial scale, but it's the same process, this enrobing process. Okay, now I'm going to have to wash my hands because I am literally losing the feeling out of my fingertips. And I'm drying my hands so that I've got nice, clean, fresh hands to carry on with. You can cheat, of course. You can get 2 or 3 pieces of fish into your flour at a time and just mix them around so that they're all pretty covered. Shake off the excess, and then you can put those 2 or 3 pieces into your bowl of egg all at once, like so. So here are the last pieces of my fish, okay, and then you can sort of move them round. So here is my the goujon that are now egged up, so we can actually put them all in one fell swoop onto the plate. There you go. So that's now ready to enrobe with the breadcrumbs. I can use the flour, coat everything with the flour, put them into the egg like so, shake them all off. So this is how to cut corners and speed up a bit. But there we go. Let's move that out the way. Now, before we can move those onto the breadcrumbs, we've got to get these finished first and on the tray. So let's get them nicely coated. That's a beautiful one. Hey presto. Now 2 fillets of salmon are going to feed 2 people really well. So if you want to double up everything and obviously cater for a family of 4, then that's fine. Okay. It's probably true that you're going to be at home when you make these. So again, you've got between now and the Monday to make them. There we go. So there's another nice goujon there. Now let's take the last 4. Make sure they're completely covered in the egg. Put them onto the breadcrumbs. Hey presto. There you are. That can go in down the drain. And let's start packing these to finish with. Put them on the tray. And then, as I said earlier, you can either refrigerate them until you're ready to cook and serve them and then eat them straight out of the oven, which is the best way of eating fish, ready, you know, cooked fresh. There we go. And here's the last little goujon. There we go. That's lovely. Pack it in. Okay. Now, for hygiene's sake, of course, we don't reuse the breadcrumbs. We don't reuse the flour. We need to throw these away because obviously there's now fish contamination in those. So we don't want to reuse them. So that's all going to go into the bin, I'm afraid. But there you go. There is the tray that is now either going to be covered in cling film or without the cling film on. Put it into the oven. And goujon this size will take, I would say these goujon will take about 12 minutes to cook. So that's it. They will be completely cooked and they'll have gone a nice golden brown, okay, on the top. And as you take them out of the oven, you can put them on the plate, serve them with mashed potatoes or salad, green veg, whatever. If you're going to incorporate them as part of a meal, you could put them, and I shall show you some I made earlier. So these are some that I made and cooked, and I've put them on top of a bed of lettuce and spring onion. I've got some slices of lemon in there as well to serve them with. And it's very nice if you want to serve that as if, you know, as part of a salad or a starter. They've all been cooked, and you can serve them with things like sweet chili sauce or mayonnaise, garlic mayonnaise, tartar sauce, hollandaise, salad cream if you wish, tomato ketchup. They're delicious. Okay, those are ready to eat because I've already made and cooked those, and you can see the nice golden brown color on there. And that, guys, that is the dish that I'd like you to make between now and the 8th of March, and take photographs and send me the photographs. If you have any questions about any of this that you've seen today, please email me on my school email account, cchaddaniels@Crypt. Okay, and I will answer any questions you may have. But for now, guys, what I'd like you to do is to go and share the recipe with your family, and make sure that you can get the ingredients in whichever variety of goujon you want to make. And I really look forward to seeing those photographs on March the 8th. Take care, everyone, and I'll see you soon. Bye.